down in the very foreground, you see that little rectangular thing? That's the shadow of the beacon on its tower. The photographer climbed up on the tower that was still there to take that shot. Go ahead. The construction, this is all OSHA approved, of course. You can tell by the scaffold. You can see the beacon has been placed up at the summit, and the catwalk around the beacon is being lifted up on that telephone pole crane. And so this would have been probably early 1941, because it was in April of 1941 when the beacon was turned back on again at its current location. And again, back to the same routine every night. At dusk, it would be turned on, and it would turn off in the following morning. And that happened all during the summer of 1941. And then something happened on December 7th, 1941. So everybody has seen this image, of course. And they turned off the beacon on December 8th, 1941. This is a famous note that we found. It's kind of hard to read. It's written in pencil, of course. November 25th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, it just says, trip to beacon, trip to beacon, trip to beacon, repairs as to, I think it's inspection. And then it says 12/8, December 8th. Trip to shut off beacon as to blackout. Of course, the West Coast blackout. There's an interesting read across the board about what happened all along the West Coast. Of course, beacons work for other people as well as mail carriers. So the beacon was shut off at that point, and by the end of World War II, we had radar. I mean, if you really want to pick nits, I know we had radar at the beginning of World War II, but barely. It was not used for common navigation at all. But by the end of World War II, of course, it was commonplace. And so the beacon became obsolete, as did all those other hundreds of beacons across the country. Most of the beacons were just torn down, sold for scrap, thrown away, whatever, except for a few that stand here and there. I just found that one on Livermore a month ago. I had no idea it was there. There's another one just like it up in Colusa. I found one in Utah this summer. I was real surprised when I was on a trip. But most of them were lost. The other 4 of the beacons that Standard Oil financed have all been lost as well. So as far as we know, this is the only beacon in the world today that's like the one that we have. So finally, in 1964, yes, sir.
There's a program on the Science Channel called What on Earth, and about 2 months ago, they had a segment about these slabs along the highway.
Oh, yeah.
Arrow pointing west. I assume those are the ones.
That's the ones. Yeah. Can you find the link and send it to me? Can you find the link and send it to me? So I'd like to see that. There are as he mentions, there are those concrete slabs still over the country. I know it's kind of a game for hobby pilots. You know, something to see when you're getting in airtime in your plane. They'll go out and look for those concrete slabs. In any case, 1964 comes along, and the Pearl Harbor survivors of the thought it would be a cool idea to relight the beacon on Monte Diablo. And Admiral Nimitz came out from retirement. He had retired in Berkeley, lived on, this is my claim to fame. He lived on Santa Barbara Road, and I grew up on Spruce Street in Berkeley, and I delivered the paper to Admiral Nimitz. So I gave a talk to the I think it was a retired naval officers club over in the city couple of years ago, and I was the only one that ever had met Admiral Nimitz. And they had all these guys with all their medals and stuff on, and of course I was 11 or 12 years old or something like that when I met him, but I did. Anyway, he came out. This is an article that's announcing that this is going to happen. This is one of those clippings from the Contra Costa Gazette. And it was lighted at the summit, as we all know. Yeah, John?
How much did he pay you for the paper?
I think it was $2 a month. I think it was $2 a month. We had to collect. So about 10 years ago, it came to light that the Pearl Harbor survivors group was not adequately insured to sponsor this event up on Monte Diablo, and true to form, the Monte Diablo State Park personnel, rather than saying let's figure out a way to make this work, they just wanted to cancel the whole event. Kathleen knows that one, and that was going to be the end of it. And at the time, Save Monte Diablo's executive director, a veteran himself, got wind of it, and well, Save Monte Diablo does have that kind of coverage to hold events of this type, and history is in fact part of our mission. I know we're all about open space, that's really true, but preservation of history is in fact part of Save Monte Diablo's mission. And so we took over the sponsorship of this event 2005 or so, and we've been doing it ever since. This is taken a few years ago, still up at the visitor center, the same building. The beacon is almost directly above the people attending here. The fellow on the left that you can barely see is Ron Brown, our executive director. So what's about this beacon? We can finally talk about the beacon a little bit. You can see it there in the dusk. Here it is up close. There's the catwalk around the building, around the beacon. It's very difficult to get a close-up photograph of the beacon. So I took this photo from the attic underneath the beacon, looking up through a little hatch that we have to get up on the catwalk where the beacon actually is, because you can't get far enough away from it up on the roof. So here's what it looks like. It's a little bit premature to show this, but here's what it looks like standing. It weighs about 1,400 pounds. The diameter of the light itself is 3 feet, 36 inches. It has a reflector mirror in it, so it's very much like anybody's flashlight. And then it rotates every 10 seconds, so 6 times a minute. There's an electric motor that runs that. Technically, it was originally tipped, well, it still is, tipped downwards a little bit, because of course Monte Diablo is at 3,849 feet, plus the 75 feet to the beacon. So it doesn't just point straight level, it points down toward the horizon a few degrees. The light's kind of fun. On the left is what was described as one of 2 robots. The other robot is the astronomical clock that, again, we've lost. But this is an automatic lamp changer. The vertical strip there at the top is a bimetallic strip that is sensitive to heat. So if a bulb burned out, the strip would change its shape a little bit and trip a mercury switch, of course, and the other bulb would flip right into place and light up. Now, that was in 1928. That was a big deal. On the right, you can see the 2 bulbs. The filament on the left is the original one. It was run on 32 volts. Why 32 volts? Because. And in the 1980s, our friend of the beacon, Bert Bogardus, retired Ranger Bert Bogardus, converted the beacon to regular old 110 volts, and that's the bulb that we see on the right. Everybody has enjoyed the great irony that the bulb is made in Japan, right? So again, our executive director, Ron Brown, had been talking to Dick about how the beacon really wasn't working very well. It did work. There was a cold night that when Dick spent 45 minutes pushing the beacon until it would run on its own. And Ron came up with this goofy idea that we should restore the beacon. Talked to Dick, and I happened to walk into the office, and Dick was there, and I said, "Hey, what's up?" And he said, "Well, we're talking about restoring the beacon." And I immediately said, "I want to be part of that crew." Like that. I mean, I didn't bat an eye. And then we started the meetings. And we met with the state park, and we met, the superintendent and so forth, and they threw up every roadblock that they possibly could. And finally, State Assemblywoman Joan Buchanan, whose district is here, she's second from the left there, she wrote legislation to allow Save Mount Diablo, the nonprofit, to restore the beacon. That's what it took. And it flew through the Assembly, it flew through the Senate. Jerry Brown signed it, and that gave us permission to enter into an agreement to restore the beacon. And finally, we came up with the agreement. So here on the left is the director of the Department of Parks and Recreation, a retired Marine, Major General Anthony Jackson, a super guy. And he wanted to see this whole thing happen also. And then Joan Buchanan, our executive director, Ron Brown. The first Smoky there is Roland Gabert, the superintendent of the park, and then Danita Rodriguez, the district superintendent. And this was December 7th, 2012. And finally, the real work could actually begin. Dick and I started scouting around.
I think it took about 6 months or so just to get the agreement. The act in the Assembly allowed us to make an agreement. It did not allow us to work on the beacon, but it still took time to get the contract written with the state parks so that we could do the work.
Which all goes to explain why I was self-employed for most of my career. Anyway, we started looking around for people, and to me, besides the Pearl Harbor Survivors group and the association that we've enjoyed with the Pearl Harbor survivors, the people that came out to help were, to me, the most important and most heartwarming part of the whole project. This is but one of them. Redwood. This is just one example. Redwood painting. You never heard of it. Anybody hear of redwood painting? Yeah.